Nice to see everybody. I see some people on our team are enjoying the weather outside. I hope there's lots of other folks that I can't see that are doing the same thing. Welcome to our 12th. This makes a dozen Wishart Municipal Group webinars. Very glad to see you guys, those who I can. So we've got a lot to talk about today. The agenda for our meeting today, Tim is going to give us some legislative updates, as he often does, and there are a number of important issues on that. I'm going to talk about a significant Planning Act change that came out recently and comes into force on Monday, so it'll be really important that anybody involved in planning for municipalities be involved in that. Nuala is going to talk after that about vaccines, ideas of mandatory mask policies, issues with respect to public transportation. And then after that, she's going to talk about issues of record keeping. Nuala is our MFIPA expert in the firm. And so she's going to talk to us about the records that the province is requiring us to keep and issues with respect to those. And then Mia is going to talk about a number of ideas and reminders with respect to innovation and dealing with the long-term financial impact of COVID. So at the outset, I just wanted to remind people that our return to work COVID training is online and available. Quite a number of municipalities have gone through it already. And that is designed to provide municipalities with a due diligence program, frankly, so that they could document to the Ministry of Labor, or in the event there was ever a need for a defense about training, so that you can say, we had everybody go through our training. The training is designed such that it will be effective for everybody in your organization, from frontline students right up to your clerk or CAO. So it's designed that all levels could participate in and understand that training. And so, like I say, that training is designed to give the municipality protection with documentation that Nuala is going to talk about, so that we can show, or the municipality could show, if there ever was a Ministry of Labor investigation, that you have taken steps to train, that you've invested in that, and that the training was actually designed by your legal team, which will be giving you a good defense. So that's what that's for. And if anybody has questions about that, touch base with Brittany via the email, and she can help you with that. So without taking further time, I'm going to hand the matter over to Tim now to talk about his legislative updates and ideas for council going forward. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Paul, and of course, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I know it's a nice day out there, as I can actually tell from looking at where Nuala was working from. So that's great, and I really appreciate you guys all taking the time to join us again. Not as interesting a week as last week in terms of big legislative updates from the government. I suppose the most relevant new piece of information this week comes from the government's decision to and I'm just looking to see what they're calling this. They've passed the Protecting Small Businesses Act, which is really focused on pausing or halting commercial evictions during COVID-19. So basically, it's a piece of legislation that applies to businesses that are eligible for federal and provincial rent assistance, and it protects them from evictions or having their property seized during the period of May 1, 2020 to August 31st, 2020. And it's really designed, of course, to help businesses. We all know businesses and are struggling because of COVID-19. I'm going to talk a little bit actually after I tell you guys a little bit more about this. I'm going to talk to you guys about the order from last week and some interesting things that perhaps we can consider doing to help local businesses. But so I just wanted to clarify this piece of legislation. It pauses evictions for small businesses, but it doesn't apply to those businesses that have applied for the community or the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. It doesn't apply to those participating because the program already requires a rent reduction agreement and certain and commits the parties to a moratorium on evictions anyways. But this new legislation gives some broad protection anyways. I know some municipalities do have commercial tenants, and so just know that there is this new piece of legislation. If you have a commercial tenant that you're looking to evict during this time, just I think aware of that legislation. If you have questions, of course, call us. We're happy to help. But know that seizing assets and evictions of most commercial tenants right now is on hold. So most commercial tenants are going to be free from eviction and property seizure until August 31st, and it's retroactive to May 1st as well. So it applies to those eviction processes that had already started. So I wanted to let you guys know about that, as I know some people do have, some of us do have commercial tenants that would be applicable to. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about on the subject of small businesses and the government looking to help with recovery, and I suppose us all looking to help our local businesses recover from COVID. I wanted to talk about the regulation that came out last week. It was the subject of the legislative update. Unfortunately, it came out. I think I looked about 15 minutes or half an hour after our webinar, and we talked about the news story, but the regulation to put it into effect came in about a half hour after we finished up. So that was the regulation that had to do with.
We see this happening frequently, Tim, where the Premier's office is watching our webinar and waiting until we're done the webinar before they put the regulations in place. That way they're making sure they're compliant with our advice.
It makes perfect sense to me, and I'd be surprised if they did otherwise. I'm expecting a flurry of regulations to come out following this one. But everyone, it's the regulation. I know Brittany Hodgkinson she does a great job sending out our thank you emails to you guys after the webinars, and Britt included a link to the regulation. It's a little long. The plan had at one time been to summarize it, but we wanted you guys to actually have the entire text of it. A couple of things, I don't want to reread it entirely for you, but there are a couple of things I just highlight while we're all together. One of the more interesting things is that may be applicable. There's some specific rules with respect to community centers. They can permit the use of facilities for outdoor sports and recreational activities. They can provide space for a day camp for children. They can permit the use of pools, we talked about splash pads a little bit last week, spray pads and wading pools, providing indoor activities and services and other aquatic indoor activities. The communal kitchens in community centers have to remain closed though, and as do interior dining spaces in community centers. So I wanted to just let you guys know about that. I thought that was important. So if your community center does have a communal kitchen, that's got to be closed. If it does have indoor dining areas, those have to be closed as well. Although community centers can open for those purposes that we just spoke about. The other one that I wanted to talk to you guys about, the other big one, and some of us have already gone to restaurants now that they're able to reopen. Some of us have already gone. I haven't yet, and there's some interesting things that the government has spoken about with respect to restaurants and bars that I want to mention. So I think everybody's aware that patrons at restaurants have to be served only through takeout, drive-through, or delivery service, or at an outdoor dining area that is in or adjacent to the place of business, and configured to ensure physical distancing of at least 2 meters between bar patrons seated in at different tables. So outdoor patios are able to open.
Let's go. What?
Sorry, guys. So outdoor public access to indoor areas and in restaurants has to be limited to food pickup, payment, washroom access. Access is required to get to the and access. So basically, people can go into the restaurant to pay. They can go in to use the washroom, pick up food, or to get access if they have to get access through the building to the outdoor dining area. That could be potentially permitted as well. There's no dancing or singing in the patios, which is why I haven't bothered to go. That's a bit of a strange rule on the government's part, but again, no. If you're at a patio, no dancing or singing. That's not permitted. One of the things that we've seen with restaurants reopening is some municipalities and some cities in the U.S. and also in Canada. I believe Thunder Bay may be one. Hamilton is another I can think of. Have done things like they've waived fees for patio licensing. So that's one of the things that they've done to help businesses, particularly the restaurant sector, reopen. So some municipalities are working with their downtown associations to look at options for example, expanding sidewalk use for patios. So making the permitting process for that easier. I've also seen some cities using other measures like creating free parking for spaces in front of restaurants to help facilitate food pickup. That's another thing that I've seen. I've also seen some areas taking an even more drastic move, which I've seen some places looking at plans to even close streets down and allow restaurants to use those areas for these type of larger patio spaces. So the concept is there's a lot of creativity that can be had with as a municipality with trying to create programs for I'm talking about restaurants specifically now, but there are some creative options that can be done to help businesses recover, help them serve more people and more effectively. Some places, of course, have deferred payment of taxes. I've seen that, of course, as well. That's another option for businesses. But there's a lot of creativity right now that can be had with respect to how businesses can be helped. One of the more interesting stories that I read actually came out of Tenino, Washington. And what Tenino is doing is Tenino Tonino started reprinting. They had a currency that was from the 1800s that they had printed on wood, and they started reprinting this currency and allowing and giving it to certain people who were lower income residents in their municipality who had been hit hard by COVID. They've been giving these wooden dollars to these people, printing them, giving them to these people. These wooden dollars have no legal tender per se, except that they're accepted by most of the restaurants and businesses in Tonino. And what it does is it's a way to create a sort of fund for these lower income residents, but also ensures that the money that gets used stays within Tonino. And so it was kind of I thought that was an interesting approach, because obviously funding programs are an option, creating just straight up funding programs for businesses or for residents. But this was an interesting approach, because I thought this is really neat. It creates a situation where the money stays within the community, so it does. It's backed by the municipality, but it's in the form of these dollars, and my understanding is the businesses collect the dollars and then redeem them through the municipality. There's been some other cities doing it closer to home here. I think Traverse City. I think the article mentions Traverse City had Bay Bucks, Traverse City, Michigan, and there were some other examples of unique sort of local style currencies that were being used to assist residents and keep the money within the community, keep the money that was being used for that purpose within the community. So there's some creative solutions that can be had, and so I just wanted to mention, people. I know we've all seen local businesses hurting, and I've been reading these articles, and I thought to myself, and speaking with Paul and Nuala and Mia, and thinking, I wanted to mention some of these things, just to give you some food for thought, some ideas in terms of things that can be done. So that's essentially my legislative update for this week. I'll turn things back over to Paul, as I know we've got a busy agenda. So I thank you guys again, and I'll turn things back to Paul.
Thanks very much, Tim. So what I'm going to talk about is a lot less exciting, I think, well, maybe, than economic development ideas that Tim's talking about. But there was a very important regulation put out this week that comes into effect on Monday, and that is an amendment to the Planning Act regulation, which was called Special Rules Relating to Declared Emergency. So previously on a webinar, I told you that the province amended the timelines for Planning Act decisions during the emergency. Well, they've amended it again, and it's important for you to be aware of this and aware of a couple of very specific dates. So as of Monday, the first date for you to be very aware of is February 26th, 2020. So that's this year, February 26th. Any notice that you were required to send out after February 26th, 2020, or that you did send out after February 26th, 2020, has to be sent out again. Now, these are notices under the Planning Act. So it would be things like your minor variances, other Planning Act approval, amendments to your zoning bylaw, amendments to your official plan. So any notice that you were required to send out on or after February 26, 2020 has to be sent out again. Now, what I told you previously is that the date that you could start sending those out is the date that the emergency is terminated. Well, that's what's been amended. So as of Monday, they amended the definition for termination date to mean June 22nd, 2020. So what this means is that all of your Planning Act notices that were to go out or did go out after February 26th of this year have to go out again starting on Monday, June 22nd, for either the 10 or 15-day period, depending on what section of the Planning Act you're dealing with. So your planning departments, your clerks, your secretary treasurers of your Board of Adjustment should be sending these notices out starting Monday. And I just want everybody to be really aware of that, because when the notice goes out, that's when the appeal period starts to run. So the municipalities have to make sure that the notices go out between June 22nd and, depending on whether it's a 10 or 15 day notice, either July 2nd or July 7th. So I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of that. So no longer are we waiting for the end of the emergency. They have said that for the purposes of the Planning Act, the emergency ends on Monday, June 22nd. Even though we now know that the emergency is going to be in effect until at least June 30th, and probably is going to be extended after that based on what we're seeing from the federal government extending the border closure until the 21st of July. So I think we're going to continue to be in an emergency, but for the purposes of the Planning Act, the emergency is effectively over as of July 22nd. So I want to make sure everybody was aware of that. That's the presentation that I have, and I'm happy to help anybody with questions on chat during the rest of it. And I'm going to hand this over to Nuala now, who's going to talk a little bit about vaccines, about masks, transportation, documentation, lots of good stuff. So over to Nuala in the lovely outdoors.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today. And as usual, we are delighted with the participation. Gives us a really good sense that everyone's feeling healthy and safe, able to participate in our webinar. And again, our heartfelt thanks for you to spend your valuable time with us on this Friday morning. There's so much material out there. We really are touched and honored that you choose our webinar. We hope to keep it content rich and applicable for you in your day-to-day operations. So again, thank you for joining us. I have a little bit of a potpourri that I want to speak about today, but I think it's pretty clear to everybody that the one reason Tim has not attended at any outdoor patio yet is the prohibition on singing and dancing, or he would be there. Once that's lifted, you can expect to see Tim shirt off, arms in the air, dancing on the patios in Sault Ste. Marie. Until then, I guess we'll just wait in silence for that moment to come. One of the more forward-looking pieces that I wanted to touch on today is vaccinations. And the world, I guess, has been hopeful that a vaccine will be developed in the near future. And I understand they've made a lot of developments in antibodies in Connecticut. So that is very hopeful. However, there are a number of people that are opposed to vaccines generally, and opposed to the to synthetic vaccines, and opposed to whatever might come in terms of the COVID-19 vaccine. These people are being labeled as anti-vaxxers in social media and regular media sites, and they vary in their objection to vaccines from. I think a lot of people are familiar with Jenny McCarthy, who has taken a pretty strong stand against the mumps, measles, rubella vaccine, as it's her contention that there is a connection between that vaccine and autism. I'm pretty confident that the scientific community does not concur with that, but it is still a very widely held view. They're now marking a distinction, anti-vaxxers, and I don't mean to say that, derogatorily. It's just a catchphrase, I guess, that I've picked up in my research. they're marking a distinction between those that are only opposed to synthetic vaccines and not opposed to the genuine, to actually ingesting a small part of the actual virus, which would be a live vaccine. It's very funny because when the polio vaccine was invented, there was so much support for it, largely from Rotary, to wipe out childhood physical disabilities, and that's what polio was doing. It was literally crippling children, and the vaccine was really supported. Now we're seeing sort of a mixed view, and even people that are less, I guess, radical in their views, or less passionate about their whole holisticism, are saying, yeah, I don't think I'd take that vaccine. I don't know enough about the virus. The world doesn't know about the virus. I don't think I would take that vaccine. Even just in my social circle, I've spoken to people that I'm getting mixed responses where people would say, if that vaccine was available today, I wouldn't take it. So the reason this is important is because as municipalities, we're going to be looked to as leaders in the community. Also, I think we've really been brought to our knees with this pandemic. And I think there's going to be a real interest in getting things back up and running, and municipal councils will be no different. So it's a caution, I guess, that we can look. Much of what we say when we're talking about our forward-looking topics is it's a moving target. It changes from day to day. But I can see municipal councils, I can see all legislatures saying a vaccine is mandatory. If that is the road that we are taking, it's very important to remember people enjoy human rights, they enjoy religious freedoms, and they enjoy medical freedoms, frankly, to whether or not they're going to take something or that it would be mandated to take it. So what can we do now so that we're able to manage it when, and I'm quite confident that a vaccine will be realized, when that vaccine is created, what can we do now to prepare for it? And I guess I'll go back to some of the ideas we had early on in these seminars, which were handpick where you get your news. Use credible sites, World Health Organization, CDC, Johns Hopkins. These are credible medical sites that you can rely on when you're trying to get information about a vaccine. And also, if you're looking holistically, I would look at more credible holistic sites. And I don't know, it's hard for me to say it with a straight face, I don't know that I would take scientific advice from a former Playboy bunny like Jenny McCarthy, but maybe she has a body of knowledge that I don't know about. But it's very important to have it's very important to have proper information when you are looking at whether or not a vaccine is going to be something that you would take and that you would require others to take and your children to take it and so forth. So I guess it's my topic on anti-vaxxers and vaccine development is sort of in an embryonic state. I expect it's going to develop, but it's something to keep in mind, because if you were thinking that a vaccine would come and it would be fantastic, we can just tell the whole world to take it, I think it's going to look a little bit different than that. Related to that, then, of course, I wanted to touch on record keeping. I mentioned this last time. When we're looking at reopening, one of the things we want, the number one thing, of course, the priority, it's always our priority, but it's even under a greater underscore now given the pandemic, and that is the safety of your staff, visitors, volunteers. That's what we want, is to have a safe workplace, safe facilities for people to re-enter. And one of the things that many places are doing is that questionnaire. We do it in our workplace. Do it every morning. Indicate, if you have symptoms, if you're living with someone that has symptoms, if you've traveled outside of the region, all of that, and we have to attest to that before we're allowed in our office. And I think I speak for the group of us that we're grateful for it. We're grateful. It protects each of us from one another, so that we can continue to work and stay safe, and our families can stay safe and healthy. But that is a record. That's a record, and it's a sensitive one now because it's actually giving medical information. So we're not sure, again, moving target, but as facilities start to open, and I think we're really going to see a big thrust from sporting communities, from the NHL and from professional sporting events, they're going to say, we're not sitting another season without an audience. So they're going to want to get people back in. And I expect one of the things they're going to be doing is temperature taking, maybe these questionnaires, certainly, physical distancing in the facility itself. But if you're running one of those facilities and you start with taking people's temperatures or recording who's entering and what, they're attesting to the fact that they don't have symptoms, don't live with anyone with symptoms. Now you have another record, another sensitive medical record that you're responsible for. It's very interesting. Paul, who can manage to go to a restaurant without singing and dancing, did go to a restaurant without the singing and dancing, and was queried, just give me a name for the table and a phone number. That's all he had to give. Could have been a made-up name, a made-up phone number. He didn't have to give the name of the other people that he was with, and that's how restaurants are complying. They're simply asking for one name, just a first name, as I understand it, and a phone number. And I think what the thinking is, should it turn out that someone was infected, they'd be able to contact these people. So obviously anybody could punch a hole through that. There's lots of problems with how they're record keeping there in terms of restaurants. I expect that'll maybe get tightened up in future days, but probably facilities will be asked to do what restaurants are doing. It's almost like a trial run. It's almost like the province is saying, let's try it like this. Let's see if we can do patios. Let's do a little bit of recording who's there and some contact information, and let's see if that works. And I think once they have that nicely solidified, they're going to say, all right, facilities, concert halls, conference areas, now you can do it, and you can do it like this. So all of that is just a big, I guess, forewarning for you that look at your records retention bylaw. These records, even though they are very skeletal little records, what's your name, do you have symptoms, have you been outside, they are medical records, and it puts them in a different category in terms of storage and dissemination and destruction, frankly. So you need to really have someone that's I remember when I was working at the City of Sault Ste. Marie, we started doing freedom of information requests, and in a 10-year window, I can say that we went from, I don't know, 1 or 2 requests a year to 7 or 8 a week. People are very sophisticated about their information. They're very protective of it. Things that we thought that were conspiratorial, like Jeffrey Epstein, that was a nonsense conspiratorial theory. Well, it's shown not to be, and it's really ramping up people's suspicion, especially of Big Brother and big government. So people are not delighted about sharing personal information with government, which is in fact what we all are. So the answer to that is to fill them with a sense of confidence that your information is sensitive medical information. We're treating it as such. And if you want to know what we do with it, how we store it, how we destroy it, it's right here in our bylaw. Excellent, excellent time to turn your minds to your record retention bylaws. I don't want to sound like a vacuum cleaner salesperson, but we can help with that. We've got lots of precedents, and we're happy to, I'm sure you all have it. If you just want someone to review your homework, send it by, because now is the time that you want to say, we looked at that very, very carefully. Paul said earlier, if you do this kind of reopening training and a Ministry of Labor inspector comes around, that's one of the things you can point to. If you get an appeal to MFIPA, this is one of the things you can point to. We take record keeping very seriously. When we heard we were suddenly going to be the gatekeeper of these medical records, this is what we did. We turned back and we looked very carefully at our records retention bylaw, and we updated it, and we retrained the person that's in charge of it, and we retrained that person's backup. So those are kind of things that you can start looking at in terms of reopening. And then the final little piece I wanted to speak about, from my perspective, it's far and away the most important. This has taken a huge toll on people, the pandemic. It's made us rethink things that we thought of as just run of the mill that we could get easily, that you could buy 4 boxes of eggs at the grocery store if you wanted to. You can't. You could walk into the grocery store. You can't. There's a lineup. There's social distancing. It's really changed people. People have been isolated. People have lost loved ones, and people have just lost touch with people that are, you know, hospitalized or in nursing homes. And I think it's important to never, ever, ever forget that some people get the virus and they're asymptomatic, and others are in ICU on a ventilator in days. So it's a monster, and it's really impacted us. And I think it has brought people to about the edge of their rope. And you're seeing it particularly, I'm seeing it particularly in aggressive driving. I'm seeing it in the way people, there was a period, we were saying in preparation for this webinar today, we were saying, you know, there was a period not that long ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, when you saw people going into the grocery store and thanking the security person who's there. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for this. And now you hear them snapping and saying, is that the exit? That wasn't the exit last week. People are fed up, and the antidote to that, the vaccine to that, is it's kindness. It's very important that we as a community be kind. I began by saying you're a leader. People look to you, to your community, for what you're going to do. And kindness, if all you're concerned about is the bottom line, if all you're concerned about is getting patrons back in your swimming pool and at your arena, you want children taking swimming lessons and going to play baseball in the park, you want that to happen again? If that's all you're concerned about, the key is still kindness. That's what brings people back. You can tell people till you're blue in the face, here's the sanitation steps we took to clean the arena. If they're scared and they don't see people entering that arena, they're not going to go. So how do you do that? Number one, your staff. Your staff is your marketing. Your staff are the people that need to say, it's a fantastic facility. We invested X human resources and money and time to bring it back where it was. And I was saying to my colleagues, you know, when I was working at the City of Sault Ste. Marie, for those of you that have had the opportunity to visit, we have a fantastic public pool, John Road swimming pool. It's accessible, it's bright. There's a number of different water features. They've got great swimming lessons. They've got aquabics. They've got baby swimming lessons. They have a quiet swim for people that are that have sensory issues. It's just a fantastic facility. Very few city staff went there. Nobody talked its praises. If you can generate in your staff a sense of excellence, our facilities are excellent. They're top notch. I use them. My children use them. That's where we go. That's where we go recreationally. I'm concerned about it. So if I go to a hockey game and I see somebody has spilt a pop, I don't just walk away from it and think, so somebody slips. I don't care. You think it's my facility. I work here. I'm proud of it. I don't want somebody to slip. First, because I don't want somebody to get hurt. Second, because I don't want us to get sued. And third, because it's an excellent facility and I don't want it to look like that. And the way you instill that in your staff is you pour kindness on them and you thank them for what they have done during this period. Now is a great time to think of, remember in the mid 80s, they had all those wellness programs that were popping up. Now's the time to dust those off and tell your staff how grateful you are for what they have done. People, as I said, people are genuinely afraid to go to work. They don't know what the future holds. And you don't know as an employer what people are dealing with. You don't know who's got a parent or a loved one in a nursing home. You don't know who's got a child at home that's immunosuppressed and they're terrified every time they go to work, but they need to go to work. So any small program you can do now you guys know my secret that I love Disney, and I think it's an excellent business model on top of being the happiest place on earth. It is an excellent business model. And from a business model, for their interns, they do a program where they tell you, this is what we expect. This is the level of service we expect. This is the type of performance we expect. But we're always watching. I'm watching, other supervisors are watching, coworkers are watching. And if we see you doing something extraordinary, we're going to mark that too. And when a coworker or supervisor sees one of these interns doing something extraordinary, going the extra mile with a visitor or a child, picking up something that's not part of their job, but they pick up something that's fallen, that's reported to another supervisor who reports it to the head of the division. And then that intern gets at the end of all of that, Mickey sticker, Mickey Mouse on it. Mhm. And it is a real source of pride for those kids, because what they're saying is, I already work at an organization of excellence. They already picked me. I already work here. I'm trained. My excellence went beyond that. And here's my proof. Yeah, it's a stupid little Mickey sticker, but I know what it means. I'm asking you to turn your mind to that type of modeling for your staff, and you will be paid back 100-fold in terms of people coming to your facilities, in terms of the cleanliness of your facilities, and in terms of just a sense of pride from your staff. What do I care if my staff has a sense of pride? You care because you get less grievances, you get less wrongful dismissal suits, you get people that are more interested in participating and fulfilling the vision that council has. So I feel like I've been preaching from the mount, but I mean it genuinely as a person. I mean it genuinely as a lawyer, and I mean it genuinely as a business person. That's the solution. So I urge you to turn your mind to that, and I'm going to turn it back to Paul.
And I'm going to turn it back to you in a minute, Nuala. But I do think, one of the things that we have seen increase during the pandemic, and we started to see it a fair bit before, was a tendency of ratepayers to be very critical of staff, to be very critical of council. And when Nuala started talking about this program, I have to say I was very struck by how simple it can be and how effective it can be. And you can imagine the young lady cutting the grass at the park being told by the mayor, "Hey, you're doing a good job and we appreciate it." That's going to make her day. That's going to make her week. She's going to tell her parents about that. They're going to be happier about the municipality. And I frankly think it's probably one of the most effective ways to throw cold water on the anti-municipal government sentiment that seems to be pervading some municipalities. And so I'm really encouraging you as municipal leaders to think about what Nuala has said. Think about how you can develop that plan in your municipality. Think about how you can actually write that plan down and demonstrate that leadership to your community. And I believe Nuala 100% when she says it will improve your business 100-fold. I think that's a very substantial understatement. Now, one of the things that Nuala was going to talk about, going along with that and the Disney theme, was the fact that all municipalities now should put a policy in place that your staff and ratepayers should wear scream masks to protect them from the virus. So I'm going to hand it back to Nuala to talk about the idea of whether we should be putting policies in place requiring face masks. They don't actually have to be the scream face mask, but I think that would be fun too. So can you talk to us about that, Nuala?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. We're seeing it now as people prepare to reopen, where you've got plexiglass screening and masks. And for example, in our office, we were all provided with masks, and when we meet with clients, we are required to wear the mask. I'm going to tell you what I know to date, but even as Canadians, we're seeing that the use of masks and the direction that we're getting has changed. Initially, it was only wear a mask if you are sick, and save them for the healthcare workers that really need them. Then we heard, well, those little cloth masks are useless. What you need is a real sort of regulator, not just a mask. And I think we heard the Jeff speaking from PPE on an earlier session where he was marking that distinction, and it is an important one. But now what we're hearing from local and federal health leaders is you should wear a mask when you're out in public, and it is preventing the spread of the disease from you to others. It's not protecting you per se, but in the event that you have the virus and you are asymptomatic, for example, it will limit the spread. So of course, when we hear that, from health leaders, okay, let's make it mandatory, and maybe we should force people to wear masks. What we're seeing in California, where they've tried to take that step, is a huge pushback. And I think it's interesting, sort of from a sociological perspective, and we spoke about this earlier also, that, with COVID, a lot of our hard-earned human rights were curtailed. And I think one of the most interesting ones for me was, that's Paul's idea of the mask that we should all wear. Just to indicate how he feels about some of the irate ratepayers that he's mentioned in the past. One of the things that has happened is we've given up certain freedoms, properly, because safety has trumped. And I mentioned in particular religious freedoms. When churches and places of worship were closed, we took that. Okay, the government said we can't go to service, so I won't. And there is a concern, especially among people that are a little bit more suspicious or conspiratorial thinking, that if they can take away our religious freedom for a virus, maybe they can fake it. Maybe I didn't have to give up my full religious freedom. And you're starting to see that sort of pushback. And you're seeing it too when things come out and this is where it was happening in California, where they tried to mandate, do not leave your home without a mask. And people were like, absolutely not. That is going far too far in terms of my human rights. So right now in Ontario, the province has not seen fit to issue an order that you must wear a mask. So we have that little provision in the Municipal Act, right, that says you can do whatever is good for the health and safety of your community. So you could probably pass a bylaw requiring mask wearing in your community. I really strongly recommend against it at this time. A couple of reasons why. Number one, we're creatures of statute. We're municipalities. That means our big brother is the province, and it means our dad is the federal government. Well, our big brother and our dad haven't said we need to wear masks. So I really strongly recommend that we follow that suit. All local health organizations are saying it's a recommendation, not mandatory. It's recommended now. Before it wasn't recommended, but now it is. And you can see that sliding scale where it started saying, you don't need to wear a mask. You should wear a mask if you're sick. You should always wear, and that might develop to, you must wear a mask. So let them take care of it for you. Let the province and the federal government take care of it for you, so you don't find yourself in a position where you have to push back. Second, one of the big areas where you're seeing mandatory mask wearing is public transit. And there is correlation between poverty and public transit. Not everybody that uses public transit, has financial issues, but a lot of people do. So it's kind of a cruel twist that some of the most financially vulnerable people in the community are being told that they must provide a mask. Well, these are people that are trying to keep the lights on and buy milk for their kids. So discretionary funding like a mask, that's a real hard push for those type of people. So if you are requiring mandatory mask wearing in your facilities, on your buses, in your arenas and so forth, you ask people to wear them, and if they don't have it, provide it, buy them and have them at the ready, so people don't have to dip into their own resources, to buy a mask to protect others. There is, I will say on the plus side, there is a definite empirical relationship between mask wearing and containing the virus. We've seen that in internationally, that's happened, so it's not a bad idea. But don't put the most vulnerable financial sector in a position where they have to pay for something that they ill can afford. We need to be providing it for them. And I guess it's sort of my personal and philosophical view also. I really do ascribe to the honey versus vinegar, and I think you'll get a lot more compliance if you explain why it's important, why it can contain. If the goal is to get back to business as per, this is the way we do it. Start wearing masks now, and let's contain it in our community. Let our community be the community that didn't have a second wave, that didn't have a spike. So, and try and get that voluntary wearing of masks rather than mandatory. So those are my comments on masks. Paul, I'll put it back to you.
That's great, and I'm I don't know what I am about Peggy Greco. That's I see the mask. Excellent leadership, Peggy. I should go grab mine as well, I guess. Mia, over to you now for the helpful updates and reminders, because I know you've got some really important issues to talk about.
Thanks, Paul. So I know Paul had mentioned I was going to talk about long-term financial impacts and innovation during crisis. I've decided this week to focus on innovation during crisis because I think that this is something that's really important. And I'm going to save the long-term financial impacts for next week because I'm looking at the time, it's 10:52, and I want to make sure I'm giving enough attention to both these topics because they're both very important. So when it comes to innovation during crisis, the main goal that we all have right now is to emerge from this crisis in a positive place. So with that being said, we have to be innovative. Simple things like Nuala said, going for a walk, going to the grocery store, or even going to work have all become a little bit different than what we're used to. So we're all thinking a lot differently now. It's very important to encourage your staff to be independent and to use their intelligence. Encourage and empower your staff. You've hired good people, so let them run and do their work and be confident in them. Everyone needs to feel the culture of innovation right now and feel like they're part of it. So something I might suggest is maybe develop a little team that's going to be focused specifically on innovation, or it could be the group as a whole, but definitely have a few individuals that are thinking about innovation and have that on their radar. So people will feel comfortable and feel safe when they feel like they're part of the team, they're excited about innovation, they're willing to take a few more risks with it. So, you know, you might want to do things like do a lot more online, maybe create an app that has to do with a service that you're providing, some way to connect with the public electronically. You know, if you're going to develop a little team, you know, maybe set aside a budget for innovation. Some examples of you know, an app or ways to be innovative are, like I know here locally in Sault Ste. Marie, they developed an app to pay for parking online. So when you drive into a parking area, there is a sign that says this is your parking area. When you go and buy parking on the app, just type in this code, we'll know what area it's in, what area it applies to. So that's one way of being innovative, you know, and avoiding people getting out, touching cash or touching coins and putting it in a machine. You're eliminating that contact. Also to, you know, maybe reporting potholes online, getting burn permits online, paying taxes online, requesting leaf pickup online, different things like that. I know all the times that I've called and requested leaf pickup, they have somehow always missed my house. So maybe if an app was developed, there's a different way of tracking that. And, you know, it's a different way of organizing it. And it also leads to kind of keeping track of what you're doing, less room for error as well. So those are just a few different ways that we can think about being innovative when it comes to developing apps and connecting with your community electronically. I think right now it's more important than ever to kind of take a look at your municipality and be proud, because we've all gone through a lot of phases with this pandemic, and not only with this pandemic, but other crises. So we've all had challenging times and we've recovered. So I think that's something really, really important to remember. Ground yourselves and express gratitude every opportunity you get. So that's kind of going back to what Nuala said, always, you know, show gratitude. Express gratitude for your teammates. Unless your team works together, there's going to be difficulty in getting tasks done. People right now are counting on their local government to build their community and build the community that everybody wants. So you want to feel connected. You count on your local government even more during tough times. You count on them to deliver services, to step up, and we're all in this together. Getting through a crisis, it's important to understand that it's unprecedented, it's uncharted waters, and this is not the first, and it probably won't be the last. And there's always going to be a way through this. And being innovative is going to be a way that is going to help us navigate out of these rough waters. So this pandemic has affected us in more than one way. So it's popped up, obviously, virally, it's a virus. It's popped up socially, it's affected us in that way, and it's also affected us financially. So thinking long-term is where innovation comes in. You have to remain nimble, because unexpected things are going to continue to come up, and we have to find different ways of dealing with them. So there's always opportunity in crisis. And like I said, you want to address these challenges as an opportunity, not only on the technology side, because we've had to look at being innovative, working from home, looking at compressed work weeks. We've already seen how innovative municipalities have been with respect to holding council meetings electronically. One other thing that I kind of want to put out there is that dealing with population, we have an older population that may not be as technologically savvy with paying taxes online or doing so. There may want to be an opportunity to have self-serve kiosks maybe in the municipality, where moving forward, a resident, if they don't have access to the internet, or their computer has broken down or whatever, there may be an opportunity to have something like a self-serve kiosk at the municipality, where that individual could pop in, take care of some of their business, and not have to worry about their taxes not getting paid on time, and so on. I know that here locally, through our municipality and the Innovation Center and a business called Maker North, they started to develop face shields. So that was, how they became innovative. So there's lots of different ways for us to do that, because I think it's the way that we're going to be heading in the future. Get projects going. Don't shelve them because it creates jobs and it gets the economy going at this time. Closures with summer camp, a lot of kids are missing that, so there may be ways of holding something on Zoom, so all the kids can get together on Zoom, see each other, see their camp leaders. It's an optimistic way of moving forward that way. The municipality may want to have maybe a little online magazine that they release monthly. I know here locally we have Rotary Fest and Rib Fest. We're not going to be having those this year, given what's going on. So is there a way to make up for that online, doing Zoom? If there's trade shows that happen in your municipality, is there a way for vendors to do that online and showcase their products? There's a lot of different ways that we can be innovative in that regard. So as we're kind of emerging from this crisis, we're finding new ways to interact. We're finding new ways to obtain business opportunities, and we're reassessing innovation and different strategies that we can use. So I want to end on that positive note that I think innovation is really exciting, and it's a positive way of moving forward, and it's a way to keep everybody connected and feel like they have a part in moving forward. So on that note, I will end there. It's 11 o'clock right on the dot, so I'm happy about that, and I will turn it back to Paul.
Actually,
Thanks very much, Mia.
Just beforehand, just because our webinars wouldn't be complete if I didn't say something about cybersecurity. I think it's really the apps. There was a great question from somebody, and I know we're pressed for time, but municipal development of apps is really interesting, and Mia had some really good points there. I won't take up too much time, but just to say one example of a contact tracing app was a custom version of Care 19, which is used by, I think, North and South Dakota. And recently it was found that that app violated the municipality's privacy policies because it was disclosing, it tracked user locations, and it actually violated the privacy policy of the municipality. And so there was some articles written about that. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. If you're going to have the apps that, for example, do things like contact tracing, just make sure you double check your privacy policies, maybe amend those first. And also just remember, the more apps that we have, the more storage we have of information. Nuala was talking about that. And especially with apps, there can be a proneness sometimes to cybersecurity considerations as well. And so that was we know I can talk for another hour about this, so I'm just going to stop talking now and mute myself. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Tim. I was actually chatting with Candy over the break that I did see an opportunity for you to speak about cybersecurity on the issue of the new app that was developed. So I sure am glad that you put that in. I was afraid we were not going to have any cybersecurity on this webinar, so that's helpful. Listening to Nuala's points about a positivity policy, she didn't use those words, but it's what comes to my mind. And listening to Mia's discussion about commending staff and innovation in light of the crisis, and thinking about Tim dancing shirtless on a patio, singing and dancing. Makes me realize that certainly we have made great progress in our firm with respect to our team as a result of this crisis. And frankly, I think that that even with all of you as our favorite clients, because that's who participates in our webinars, we do feel that although we haven't been able to be at your municipal office, we certainly feel a connection with you, and we really thank you for joining us. And we do see that this innovation that Mia is talking about is absolutely a benefit that's going to come out of this crisis. So thank you very much for attending today. I had shared the poll results of the questions about the vaccine. Interesting statistics there. And remember to send out your planning notices Monday or later. Don't send them out today, because the termination date doesn't happen until Monday. If you send them out today, you'll get to do it again on Monday. So leave that task for later. So thank you so much. Be safe. Have a great weekend. It looks like some beautiful weather ahead, and we will see you next week. Have a good weekend.